Having visited a possible alternate future and then bouncing through the negative zone, the Fantastic Four have returned to the 616 reality, their home reality. They appeared in Paris and were elated. Finally, they could go home, shower, change, eat some human food, sleep in their own comfortable beds, and Reed and Sue could finally hold their son again. But their joy was cut short as Ben Grimm noted that the normally steel monument, the Eiffel Tower, is now made of bone. This is an effect that the Fantastic Four have seen before, back in issue 1 of this very volume covered in our episode 12.1. This looks like the handiwork of the Ruined. If you're new here, or if you shamefully skipped episode 12.1, then what the crap are you doing listening to episode 12.11? That's weird. But anyways, my mentioning of the Ruined may not mean a lot to you if you haven't listened to those episodes or read those stories, so let me Cliff Notes it for you. The Ruined are a super-powered race from another dimension. A sealed portal to their dimension was found beneath Paris by the DRC, or Deterrence Research Corporation, which is one-half scientific institution, one-half weapons developer. Struggling with some activists protesting the dig site, the portal was accidentally opened, releasing both a green mist and a transformative effect. A number of people were possessed by members of the Ruined, complete with new physicalities, new personalities, and new powers. The very reality of Paris was being changed as well, regressing to a world built of stone and bone. One of the protesters, a woman named Yvette Diamond, was chosen to be their martyr, meaning that she would need to sacrifice herself in order to make the Ruined's transformation of Paris permanent. If left unchecked, all of Earth would eventually become an entirely new world, one that was ruled by the Ruined. Except they were checked by the Fantastic Four. The thing chucked the Louvre Pyramid into the portal, disrupting its fragile energy matrices. The physical nature of Paris was restored, and the people that were changed reverted to normal. Except for Yvette. She retained the bone armor, her enhanced strength, and the sword of martyr. Unwilling to be a lab rat for the DRC or for Mr. Fantastic, Yvette left in order to figure out what she should do with her newfound power. So, has she taken up the Ruin's cause? Have they found a new way to infect our dimension? Or is something else at work here? My name is Ben, and we're gonna find out in Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.11. How many plot lines is too many? Issue 30 opens with the Fantastic Four atop the Eiffel Tower, surveying the changes done to the city. Penciler Salvador LaRocca does some gorgeous shots of various Paris landmarks, including the Arc de Triomphe and Notre Dame. This is a beautiful series of shots, really. The detail on Notre Dame alone, it's just beautiful. Johnny grumbles and groans about having to fight the Ruined again. Is this gonna be another one of those things where they have to fight somebody every, I don't know, like 19 publication months or so? Mr. Fantastic doesn't jump to the same conclusions, though. As a scientist, making statements without information leads to mistakes. They need to learn more about what's happening before they can act. The Fantastic Four leave the tower, teaming up their powers once again. Ben holds on to Sue, who makes the group invisible, while Reed acts as their parasail, keeping them afloat over the city while Johnny pushes them along. This is another neat use of their powers. I like this. The Fantastic Four land in an empty Paris. They head to the construction site of the DRC's new European headquarters, where the Ruined first appeared. The site was closed by the French government after our last adventure, but having now evacuated the city, there is no one to stop our heroes. They head down, and are pretty creeped out by the general area. It has, a supernatural sense of dread to it. They discover some new hieroglyphics on a wall, and Reed begins to scan them using his computer suit. Johnny pops up, and actually, he wanted to talk to Reed about the computer suits. Like, Reed has records of everything that the Fantastic Four do or say because of these costumes. Distracted, Reed answers, yeah, sure, he has access to that data. This upsets Johnny. Does Reed have, no concept of privacy? Sue cuts their discussion short as she invisibly strikes at the shadows. A human male approaches the Fantastic Four. And it's Jean, no swearing, Renault. Visually, this character looks exactly like French actor Jean Renault. And then he introduces himself as an agent of the French Secret Service, and his name is Renault. No swearing. Love this. Renault looks to save his city and his country, and he is willing to do whatever he needs to, including team up with the Fantastic Four to do it. He points out to Mr. Fantastic that this ruined incursion seems different from the last one. Mr. Fantastic agrees with that, and he gestures to a mural on the wall. The mural vaguely recounts the ruin's last invasion attempt, and reintroduces those characters for us. We've got the too large of a brain having stem, the blue flame-headed and handed Exalt, the stone-armored Baar, who has lost the D that was in his name. He used to be named Debar, and of course, Yvette as Martyr is in the center of the image. There is also a new figure on it, female, who wields two swords. As the Fantastic Four watch, the mural changes before their very eyes, this new figure gaining a face and some hair. Johnny jumps up. He knows that woman. That's Arlise, the model that he briefly flirted with back in issue 1. But how is she involved in this? A good question, Johnny. But let's put a pin in that. Most of this beginning was Claremont recapping our recent events, like the Fantastic Four's return from the negative zone, recapping older events, like the Fantastic Four's first encounter with the Ruined, and then setting the stage for this single issue, by showing us Paris and traveling through it. There really is a lot more telling than showing going on here, although Penciler LaRocca does make sure to draw the city empty. Looking at that 2-page spread of the various locations, with its darkened buildings, empty streets, and meticulous details, along with Liquid's green, blue, and black coloring, I'm honestly creeped out. Claremont's running commentary from the Fantastic Four hurts this effect, as they just feel mildly annoyed or inconvenienced by what's happening. This is a moment where I wish that Claremont had just stick to narrating the scene rather than having the cast talk over it. Just do something like, so strange is it to see the city of lights gone dark. Even the Fantastic Four are struck silent. Real quick, thank you, Mr. Claremont, for teaching me how to write overdramatic prose. But, to be fair, Claremont's dialogue does explain why the city is empty, which we wouldn't know otherwise, and he also explains how the Fantastic Four are working together. The dialogue does serve a narrative purpose here, but it also undercuts the creepy, foreboding vibe that the artwork provides us with. The appearance of Jean Renault as himself, though, is great. I literally laughed out loud when I first saw him. This is totally him. And I thought that this would just be a cute Easter egg and that we would move on, but no, then he introduces himself as Renault. That's awesome! It not only highlights both Claremont's and LaRocca's sense of humor, but it gives Paris a hand in its own fate. This isn't just the American Fantastic Four showing up to save the day and Paris is just some victim. This works to exemplify the idea that people live and work in Paris, even if Marvel as a company doesn't set a lot of their stories there, and this shows that the people that live there have some agency. For those who may not know, Jean Renault is a French actor who has appeared in a number of notable films, like Mission Impossible, Ronin, Wasabi, The Da Vinci Code, The Professional, and the movie that I first saw him in, America's 1998 Godzilla movie. Get this, in that movie, Jean Renault played a member of the French Secret Service. However, there is another layer to Renault's appearance here. Here's the thing. We met Redwing and Lucas, we met Lockdown and Rosetta, and now we meet Renault. But if Claremont was busy introducing new characters in this, I hesitate to say story arc, but why would he stop here? I mean, we're just throwing out new peeps left and right. God damn! No swearing! Left and right are another R&L pairing! Anyway, adding in some French superheroes would feel like a very natural thing to do, and it would further show that this is the Paris of the Marvel Universe. But that would also crowd what is already going to be a crowded issue with even more people, and more importantly, making Renault a living Easter egg makes us trust him. We see this and we think that it's a joke, just a fun gaffe between the creators and the audience. We accept Renault and trust him because he isn't really a character. This allows Claremont to focus on the other story elements, which simplifies our overall narrative. Plus, as an audience, if we're already familiar with the type of character that Renault generally plays, then we already know who he is because we've seen him be this character. Now, this is a trick that might not work 20 years later, and people may not have seen those movies, but that is a pretty clever way of shorthanding a character introduction. Also, Wasabi is an okay movie. I personally thought that Ronin was pretty boring, although it does feature Sean Bean in a role where he doesn't die. I also think that Godzilla is pretty stupid, but it's a lot of fun, especially Renault's character. So, what's going on with Arlise? Let's move on and find out. We find her at the Musée des Cluny, a Gallo-Roman bathhouse turned monastery turned museum. Bursting out of the door is Arlise, her dark hair flying behind her as a ponytailed blonde guides her by the hand. Narration tells us that this is Margali Zardos. Interesting. And Paris has been Margali's sometimes home since she was a child. Margali is counting on that familiarity to save them both, but a burst of blue flame from Exalt cuts them off. The ruined have cornered them, although, notably, Yvette is cradled unconscious in the arms of Baar. Stem praises Margali for the lovely hunt, but the time for running has passed. Golden energy crackles around Margali's hands as she preps a counterspell. She has traveled too far along the winding road and paid too high a price to do so for her to die now. She doesn't notice that behind her, Arlise has begun to transform, her skin turning gray-blue and her black hair falling away. Now wrapped in cloth, she is Qatar of the Bloody Blades, and Margali has lost this fight. At the ruined dig site, the cartouche of Qatar upon the wall is gone, replaced by an image of Arlise. Johnny guesses that the ruined have possessed her too, and, enraged, he lights his flames. In a burst of fire, he flashes out of the tomb. Sue comments that she doesn't think that even her force field could have held him back, but it's Ben who notes the ash that Johnny left behind. But why? What did he burn? Reed explains that he burned his costume, effectively cutting him off from the rest of the team. Even Johnny realizes what a boneheaded move this was as he rises above the city. He doesn't even know where Arlise is, although a burst of convenient energy draws him to the Musée des Cluny. He burns a large 4 above the location to give the others a clue, and then drops down to it. Inside of the ancient structure, we descend into the Frigidarium, where the cold water baths were long ago. Margali hangs in the air, suspended by mystic, flesh-colored tendrils that sap her energy. Near her floats Yvette, bound by her own set of tendrils, but she isn't herself. Her face is expressionless and her pupils are gone, replaced by shifting motes of energy. Stem stands below, eager for the ceremony to be completed. But that's when the Human Torch flies in, only to get double-teamed by Exalt and Baar. The pair brag about how awesome they are and how Margali's blood, the blood of the Sorceress Supreme, will sanctify their spell and make the transformation complete. The Torch does his best to fight back, but he's just not enough to beat them, nor can he risk hurting the innocents that the Ruined have possessed. Qatar swings a blade of purple energy at Johnny, and it slices through him, although it doesn't cut him. Pain erupts through his body, though, and he falls to the ground. His flames flicker out, and he is left on the ground, stark naked. The Ruined take up cardinal positions around Yvette and Margali, protecting the ceremony. Yvette holds her blade up high, and then she swings it down. But something stops her arm. The invisible woman's force field draws away, revealing the massive hand of the Thing blocking Yvette. While Ben holds her fast, Sue wraps the rest of the Ruined in a force field, which allows Reed to rescue Margali. He tries to pull her free, but the tendrils holding her stretch and grow, spawning more that strike at those who would ruin this sacred act. Soon all of them are caught in its mass, save for Renault. He presses his gun to Yvette's head. He has a possible solution to their problems. Mr. Fantastic shouts for him to stop. He doesn't have to do that. Renault argues that one life to save all of Paris, and possibly the world, seems more than fair to him. Mr. Fantastic refuses to accept this. He shouts to Johnny that they're counting on him, and the young man stands up. Pulsing, coiling tendrils engulf him, but Johnny then lights himself on fire. So enraged, so focused is the Human Torch that his flames burn only the tendrils. The others in the room don't even feel the heat from them. The fire continues to burn the massive tendril, and the Fantastic Four beat feet out of Clooney. Mr. Fantastic grabs Margali, and the Thing has Yvette, although he does stab her sword into the wall as they go. Maybe leaving this behind will keep this kind of crap from happening again. With the tendrils' energy destabilized, they eventually build to a huge explosion, which the Fantastic Four survive thanks to the Invisible Woman's shield, and the museum survives because the explosion's magic, I guess. I don't know. Vampin' magic, y'all. Paris then reverts to normal, as do the people that the Ruined possessed, including Arliss. They're also all apprehended by the French government. Johnny protests this. After all, Arliss was a victim here, and she's an American citizen. But Renault argues that this is a matter of national security. It was France that was attacked, and so it falls to France to chart their response. Naturally, this doesn't sit well with Johnny. The Fantastic Four just helped save all of Paris. Doesn't that count for anything here? The Fantastic Four did do France a great service here, and Renault thanks them on behalf of himself and his country. But their gratitude also ends here. France is willing to provide a ride to the airport and fly the quartet back home, but for now, they're done here. Thank you for your service. Ben waits for Renault to leave before he asks Reed if they are actually done here. And, like the last time they were here, and like when they were dealing with Genosha, Reed answers yes. Legally, there's nothing they can do. But the Ruined clearly pose an ongoing threat to the world. While the Fantastic Four are done here for now, Reed is confident that they will be back. There is a shocking amount of story left in this issue, given that our main plot just ended, so let's break that down a bit before moving on. To begin with, the very fact that Claremont returns to the Ruined at all is a bit weird. While the author of issue 1, Scott Lobdell, certainly left the fate of Yvette Diamond open, he did a really good job of closing out the overall threat of the Ruined. The possessed humans were returned to normal, save for Yvette, who had control of her own mind, and she was fairly level-headed in that story. If no one ever touched upon the Ruin again, well, I don't think that anyone would honestly have minded. So why did Claremont bring them back, then? I would argue that they're a bad overall fit for this particular issue. Claremont is clearly set on doing a one-shot story here, but there is just so much that we don't know. We have no idea how the Ruined came back, how they began the spell to transform Paris this time, what the deal with those mystic tendrils were, how they changed Arlise, how they controlled Yvette, or if they were targeting Margali, or if they just happened to find her and then replaced Yvette with her. Last that we knew, the possessed humans had returned to normal, so is this group of Ruined a new batch of possessees? Or once a Ruin possesses a person, are they like mystically bonded forever or some junk? The ending, in which the French government took custody of the humans, would seem to indicate that the bond is forever, otherwise Arlise wouldn't pose a threat. But we just don't know anything more concrete than that, and there aren't enough pages in the book to explore those ideas more. It is possible that Claremont just didn't want another author's unfinished narrative hanging over his head, but I really find that unlikely as well. As I said before, Lobdell wrapped the Ruin story up pretty nicely, save for Yvette, who really should be getting explored as her own character now, and not as a chess piece of the Ruined, but maybe that's just me. Claremont shows no initiative in finishing up the other plot lines that were left hanging, like the Iconoclast's attack on the Fantastic Four in issue 2, or for furthering the Red Ghost's loss of mental faculties from issue 3. Plus, Claremont has like 3 or 5 dangling plot lines of his own right now, so why focus on something that was such a non-issue? He might be territorial of his narrative space, sure, but I don't think that fits quite right. The point here could be to serve as the introductory step to another idea, though. After all, this story did pull in Margali Zardos, and given that a future version of her appeared in Fantastic Four issue 16 as a mystical defender of the Earth, perhaps Claremont was introducing her modern counterpart to set her upon that road. Like, maybe it was seeing the threat of the Ruined from another dimension that causes Margali to take up that role, one that ultimately will cast her as a hero of the multiverse. While it is certainly a conceptual stretch on my part, it's also the best guess that I can come up with. Speaking of Margali, she is really underrepresented here. Despite being called the Sorceress Supreme, a title that I'm not actually sure that she holds, by the way, she appears pretty much useless against the Ruined. I'll totally buy that the Ruined are a much greater physical threat, but Margali is a super experienced sorceress, and nothing so far indicated that any of the Ruined were, like, magical themselves. So she comes off as just a damsel in distress, and she floopin' disappears after the Fantastic Four save her. Literally, there is no reaction to being saved, how she feels about the Ruined as a threat, or how she feels about the Fantastic Four. She doesn't need to be here. And honestly, given that the Ruined were counting on Yvette to, martyr herself in order to make their transformation permanent in their first story, why doesn't that plan work here? Why do they need to kill Margali when they have Yvette perfectly within their control? This is an incongruity that is never addressed, and it bugs the ever-loving no swearing out of me. I would also like to point out that, when captured, Margali wishes that her daughter and foster son were here to help her, referring to the sorceress Amanda Sefton and the X-Man Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler. Astute listeners may recall that Amanda goes on to become the ruler of Limbo in the year 2000's X-Men Magic miniseries, which I spoke about way back in episode 4, so hey, everything comes together even when you're doing a ramshackle podcast. And yeah, Amanda does pack a bit of a punch. But other than cementing the idea of who Margali is, this scene serves no other purpose. It ends up coming off more like a name drop or a brag than anything actually useful. I am one of the people who doesn't mind Claremont pulling ideas from the X-books in order to create this particular run, but come on, man, there was no need to reference a detail like that. That doesn't add anything, it just ends up annoying me as it makes it feel like Margali can't exist outside of that circle of characters. Margali does classically live in Europe. I can buy her being in Paris, and I can buy that the Ruined want her magical blood or whatever. But just leave it at that. Let her live her life. I was initially thrown by Claremont reintroducing Arliss again. Again, we haven't seen her since issue 1, and I mean, she was a throwaway flirt character for Johnny. It's not like there was a lot of depth there. I barely remembered her, and I certainly didn't think that Johnny would remember her. But Claremont chose her specifically to connect the threat of the Ruined with the audience and Johnny. While we know next to nothing about the woman, we do know her, and so when she is threatened, we fear for her more than just some random Parisian. Plus, we sympathize with Johnny, who was clearly attracted to this woman, and, at least vaguely, he cares for her safety. So when he gets heated, we get heated, and we want to rescue her. Again, this is a lot of shorthand writing work to invest your audience in a threat. It does feel more like a clinical move here than a natural one, thanks to the shallowness of her and Johnny's relationship, but it is still better than just some random person drawn off the street. In the same way that we trusted Renaud because he is an Easter egg, we feared for Arliss, because she at least was a love interest. Oh, I did really like Renaud being ready to kill Yvette, by the way. It's important to remember that Renaud is a member of the French Secret Service. He is not a superhero. Morals don't need to play into his saving of Paris. I'm glad that he didn't have to kill her, but I like that the moral problem that his role here forced upon the Fantastic Four is at least addressed. I also enjoyed Claremont's handling of Johnny in this particular issue. When he realizes that Arliss is in danger and he leaves, burning off of his suit, that is a great moment. And not just because it is impactful visually, Claremont does a great job with Johnny flaming on, but because of how it works character-wise. Claremont already established earlier in this issue that Johnny was uncomfortable with Reed monitoring them through their costumes. Add on top of that a few days, if not like a week plus, of traveling the negative zone, eating strange food, fighting constantly to stay alive and maybe make it home, plus the Ruin's invasion of Paris, and Arliss just happened to be the breaking point. He rushes off to save her, to burn off some of that energy, but he also chooses to burn his costume. Remember, the Human Torch's uniform is made of treated unstable molecules. It is supposed to ignore his flames when they're ignited. So in order for him to burn it off, he had to target it specifically. And this is a really subtle sign of how angry Johnny is with Reed. I do wish that something more came of this divide in how the two men view their rights to privacy versus the Fantastic Four's effectiveness as a fighting unit, but Claremont always likes to play the long game. Maybe he intended to bring this back up. I kind of get the feeling that Reed would make the argument that while he has access to all of this data about his teammates, he only looks at a specific set of it or something like that. So rather than being like, oh, Johnny's heart rate indicated that he really has feelings for Caledonia that even he won't admit to himself, I feel like Reed would be much more along the lines of, oh, when we fought against a nihilist, Johnny was using only 60% of his power output in order to defeat him, and do those kinds of weird Reed Richards study things. The ending of this issue really frustrates me because it's pretty much a copy and paste of Lobdell's ending, but where Lobdell had the ruined-free humans go off to figure out their lives, Claremont has them being taken by the state. But the Fantastic Four are still powerless to play any role, or they choose to be powerless at least. I mean, they stormed Genosha, a nation that was embargoed by the United Nations only days ago from their perspective. You already pissed on the UN, why not add France to that list? Reed would probably do a much better job of examining the Ruined and either figuring out a solution to their problem or finding a way to keep the humans, human as well. But no, they shrug and they leave and they go home, and it's lame. Speaking of the Fantastic Four going home, we are returning to Pier 4 for the end of this issue. Inside the Fantastic Four's home, we find Franklin Richards enjoying a movie with Puppy, while Alisande and Alyssa keep an eye on him. There's no mention of how long the Fantastic Four have been missing, save for the fact that they disappeared recently. The home is pretty calm, though, until Franklin looks up in shock as someone enters the room. This causes Alessandre and Alyssa to turn as well. Entering the room in a pink nightshirt and some shorts is a blonde, teenaged girl who is calmly brushing her teeth. Or, well, she was brushing her teeth. She pauses, looking back at the confused faces. What? Alyssa is like, who the no swearing, are you, kid? But like, politely. And the girl replies, what? I wanted a glass of water before I went to bed, Aunt Alyssa. Why? What's the deal? Then she spots Franklin, who she says should be much older. He is her big brother. This finally clicks it for Franklin. This is Valeria. He has seen her in his special dreams, meaning his prophetic dreams. Valeria slaps her forehead. Oh, her mom is gonna kill her. But we don't have time for that, as the roof suddenly falls in and Bounty arrives. Remember her? Bounty is like 7 feet tall with long black hair. She appears to be Caucasian with a dusty red trench coat over her purple leather outfit. She aims 2 guns at Alessandre and Alyssa, explaining that she has a warrant good throughout this continuum for the capture of Alessandre Stewart. She will kill to get her if she has to, but that's up to them. Unwilling to let this woman take her babysitter, Valeria punches Bounty in the face, and an armored gauntlet appears on her hand while she does so. A light effect then passes over her body, and her night clothes transform into a costume that is 1 part Fantastic Four and 1 part Dr. Doom cosplay. If she wants Alessandre, then she's gonna have to beat Marvel Girl first. And Bounty elbows her in the stomach. Yeah, kid, you got it. I will beat the absolute crap out of you. Marvel Girl does try to return a punch, but Bounty dodges it. It's important to note real quick that when Marvel Girl misses, she does hit a brick wall and shatters it, so I'm assuming that she has some form of super strength. Bounty slips behind her and grabs Marvel Girl under her arms, jumping into the air to body slam her. But then we just jump cut over to Alessandre, who turns into Caledonia so that she can defend herself. While Caledonia talks about then defending the Richards kids, Bounty slaps some high-tech handcuffs on Valeria, freeing her up to fight the Scots Highlander. But first, a grenade falls through the hole that Bounty created. Without even thinking, Bounty dives onto it, while Caledonia shields the non-combatants. But the detonation knocks them all out. 4 women enter the room. They're dressed in silver and off-white outfits, 1/2 sci-fi looking armor, 1/2 bathing suit. One of them, a woman with long blonde white hair, is pleased. All of their targets were downed easily. They'll secure them and then prepare them for transport. Once the Fantastic Four return home, they, and specifically Susan Richards, will learn the cost of crossing the Bacchae. I feel like Claremont, wrote all of his plot lines down on little slips of paper and then put them all in a hat, and then the ones that he pulled out, he decided he was going to put into this issue, but instead he pulled out all of them, and that's on top of the story with the Ruined? That's just crazy to me. So, we've got Valeria Von Doom appearing here, who we originally saw in Fantastic Four issue 15. She's from the alternate future where Sue married Dr. Doom. She's clearly lost as to how she's here, so her arrival wasn't intentional on her part. I'm still not 100% sure on what her powers are, other than maybe enhanced strength, and I'm not sure if that comes from her physicality or from the Doom gauntlets that she's wearing. And she can possibly move through time without thinking about it, because how else did she get here? Then we've got the fact that Bounty showed up, who at least we knew was coming eventually. This is the first time that we see her, though, and she is a tall drink of water. This display of her combat skills works much better as a demonstration of her abilities than the bar scene where we initially met her. We now know that she is fast, she's tough, she's smart, and honorable, diving on that grenade at the end. I think that, like so many other new characters that we've met recently, her overall design isn't really noteworthy or terribly interesting, but again, she doesn't seem to be a bad character overall. Then, finally, we have the arrival of the Bacchae. Their look has improved overall. They look much sleeker and more modern than the last time we saw them. This look works much better for me than the BDSM-inspired outfit that they were wearing back in issue 7. Why they have a problem with Sue, I don't know. It was Alyssa Moy who ran into the Bacchae and prevented them from killing the head of the Golden Sword Gang, so why the grudge? And what perfect timing do all of these women have in this one issue? Valeria shows up from out of nowhere, Bounty shows up from out of nowhere, and the Bacchae show up from out of nowhere as well, all while the Fantastic Four are missing in action. From a storytelling perspective, this feels kind of lazy, but I'll admit that it doesn't really bother me either. I'm worried that having all of these threads converge all at once, with very little reason as to why, means that we're going to get a poorly thought out reason next issue, but right now this is just breakneck, fast-paced fun. But let's find out for ourselves. When our assorted heroes awaken in Fantastic Four issue 21, they are in Club Dene, a new night spot that opened recently. None of them are restrained or locked up or anything. Even Valeria's hands are free from the shackles that Bounty put on her. Standing over them are two people. One is a tall blonde woman who is dressed in golden armor and helmet, armed with two swords. She introduces herself as Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons. Behind her a step is a man in purple and blue cloth with a high-ass collar and a matching cape. He wears a thin black mustache, and his black hair circles his head like a crown. This is the man that Hippolyta serves. He is Hades, Lord of the Grecian Underworld. What are you guys doing here? Impetuous as her Uncle Johnny, Valeria challenges Hippolyta to a one-on-one fight. Caledonia stops her, though. If she really is Franklin's sister, as she claims, then her first priority needs to be protecting him. Caledonia will be the first line of defense. She then introduces herself, and Hippolyta accepts her challenge, tossing away her cape. The two women fight ferociously, moving so quickly that they dazzle the rest of the onlookers. But neither lands a blow. Each thrust or slash is dodged by sheer millimeters. They're evenly matched, it seems. So Caledonia asks Hippolyta if she will yield. Hippolyta answers that she cannot, as both an Amazon and as their queen. Well, crap. Caledonia switches her tactics then, shouting for Valeria to get the others out of here while she's keeping Hippolyta busy. While Caledonia is distracted by doing this, Hippolyta dives in and manages to stab Caledonia in her right side. She holds her bloody blade up and smiles at the other woman. Do you yield now? Caledonia, who is the last of the Highland Scots in her reality, declares that she will never surrender. The ring of steel fills the air as they continue to fight, and Alyssa finally encourages the kids to GTFO. She grabs Franklin and tells Valeria to get Bounty. The big woman is still reeling from that stun grenade last issue, having taken the brunt of the blast. Valeria wants to leave her. She is hunting Caledonia, after all. But Alyssa won't let her. She saved them from the grenade, so they owe her one. But this rather slow escape is blocked by 4 members of the Bacchae. Valeria smiles, ready for this fight. But the Bacchae suddenly turn and run, going to help their queen. Caledonia has fought on bravely, first disarming the queen of one blade, then she cuts through the second, and then she punches Hippolyta in the face with her handguard. Seeing their queen in danger, the Bacchae went to support her. An attack on Hades' forces, though, is an attack on him, and he isn't willing to let this insult stand any longer. Hades throws up his arms and opens a portal back to his realm. Hippolyta, the Bacchae, and Caledonia vanish into the floor. Valeria runs forward, diving after the woman that she knows as a lifelong caring nanny. but she only smashes her face into the floor. With the Bacchae gone, the group has no one to follow. Alyssa suggests that now they call, the Avengers or somebody. They deal with Greek gods and crap, yeah? But these idiots have kidnapped family, Valeria argues, and so it's up to family to rescue them. Bounty, finally standing on her own, volunteers to help them. Valeria protests that, but Alyssa finally lays down some law. The longer that Valeria cries about her situation, the colder Caledonia's trail will get. Valeria needs to use the tools that she has, and that includes the strength of Bounty. So Valeria turns to Puppy next, and tells him to teleport them all to the underworld. But Puppy runs from her to Franklin. He doesn't like Valeria, clearly, and Franklin says that if Puppy goes, then so does he. No one likes this demand, but no one can get Puppy to move otherwise. In a flash of blue energy, Puppy teleports them all. Claremont uses most of this issue to sell us on the idea of Valeria Von Doom, aka Marvel Girl. While I don't feel like she has done a great job explaining or demonstrating her powers, I do like her overall character. She's vivacious and spunky, unafraid of Bounty, unafraid of the Bacchae or Hippolyta, or even the strange situation that she's found herself in. She just rolls with everything, and she has to, after all. She doesn't really have a choice. If anything unfortunate happens in the past to her brother, then it could affect her future, too. To this end, Claremont plays up some comedy moments in this issue, like when the Bacchae faced her and then ran, Valeria bragged about being so intimidating, only to learn that the Bacchae prioritized saving Hippolyta instead. Or when Valeria dives for the portal but then smashes her face into the floor. These moments are meant to endear us to Valeria, and I have to admit that the tone shift feels weird, but I do like the lightheartedness. Everything here is so dramatic that the comedy bits end up feeling more forced than natural, at least to me. The narrative focus on Valeria feels weird, too. While I'll fully admit that Alyssa and Caledonia have similar character voices, we're at least much more used to them as leading characters in this book. Alyssa is an almost Reed Richards level genius, and she's clearly had some adventures of her own. She's capable of handling herself, I would argue, as is Caledonia. But neither of them are our focus here. Valeria is, and that reads as odd. I understand that the point is to have Valeria win our hearts, but from a narrative standpoint, it's just a strange shift in focus so suddenly. At first, I was a little annoyed that Valeria's introduction here doesn't really feature any of those that she claims to have as family, meaning the Fantastic Four, but then it occurred to me that that is actually by design. Obviously, Valeria's presence here is going to cause some emotional issues with the team, so Claremont has the extended family bond with her first. Alyssa really has no choice but to trust the girl. After all, Caledonia was kidnapped, Franklin is a child, and Bounty is, well, totally unknown. But Franklin does seem to know and trust her, and so Alyssa trusts him, and this adventure is going to bond them all together as a unit. So, when the Fantastic Four do return home and meet Valeria, and they're probably going to be skeptical of her, she is going to have some allies arguing for her. We also have the reveal that Puppy is able to teleport, and I'm surprised at how casually this is done. Now, if you were familiar with the Inhumans, then you might know that their dog, Lockjaw, has a tuning fork on his forehead, and he can teleport anywhere. Puppy also has a tuning fork on his head, and Reed Richards intimated that he knew of Puppy's lineage. He just wasn't sure how to get Puppy home, or what losing the dog would do to Franklin, so it is very likely that Puppy is somehow related to Lockjaw, or at the very least, he's related to the Inhumans. Clearly, Puppy and his powers are known to Valeria, as she's from the future, but this is the first time that we have seen anything special about Puppy. I like Puppy disliking Valeria, though, as he isn't familiar with her at all, although he has clearly bonded with Franklin over the many months that they've been together. For a background character, that's some nice character thought. Across the Atlantic, we catch up with the Fantastic Four, who are now the guests of the French government, although they are at the Ritz Hotel, so, they're not doing too bad. Renault is still with them at the moment, and, along with Ben and Johnny, they all vaguely recap their situation. As Johnny continues to complain, Reed's communicator chirps. He activates it and is presented with a 3D hologram of Bounty about to body slam Valeria from last issue. But then the voice coming from the communicator is Alyssa's, and she tells Reed all about what is happening in this issue. Sue is pretty upset, like, how could you let this happen, Alyssa? And Alyssa is appropriately like, what the fuck? No swearing! Do you expect me to do? Everyone in this family has superpowers besides me. Just get here when you can, I guess. The Fantastic Four turn to Renault. So, we need a lift, bro. But even with the Concorde, crossing the Atlantic will still take 4 hours, Renault explains. Ben suggests that they call the Avengers and ask to borrow the Quinjet, but Reed doesn't think that's the right idea either. Even if the Fantastic Four could get to the Underworld, I guess, they have no experience fighting Grecian gods, and they would be in Hades' territory with no idea what's going on or of their enemies' strengths. They need to be smart about this. Ben is right in that they need to call the Avengers, but they only need to call one of them. Hercules.
Honey, you mean Hercules!
Ladies, please. The Fantastic Four then fly to East Africa in their improvised airfoil. How is that faster than an airplane? Like, I get that it's a cool visual, but like, whatever. And we find Hercules engaged in battle. You remember back in issues 13 or 14, how I mentioned the X-Men crossover called the Magneto War, and how it was having an effect on Iron Man's armor on the moon? Well, Magneto did hold the world's electricity hostage, and, while the X-Men had almost beaten him, the United Nations offered a deal. If he released the magnetosphere and restored the world to normal, the United Nations would grant Magneto sovereignty over Genosha. Given the ongoing nature of the Civil War there, they hoped that the conflict would occupy him, keeping his attention focused away from taking over the world and more on dealing with domestic issues. And if they got lucky, the Civil War just might kill him as well. Well, some of the Genosians weren't interested in having Magneto as their ruler, and so they fled to Africa once he did take charge of it. But East African mercenaries have begun to rob the refugees, and Hercules has come to their aid. The Fantastic Four now come to his aid, and they quickly settle the issue for now. They explain what's going on their end of things, and Hercules is down with helping, of course. But even he isn't confident that he could take Hades in a fight these days. But he does have a way of helping, if the Fantastic Four would humor him. If it'll get their son back, they'll do whatever they have to. Okay, so, you folks haven't gotten to actually read Claremont's dialogue in this run so far. I've mentioned before that he's very verbose, and that everyone has a very expository, kind of stiff way of talking about whatever it is that they're doing. Well, if you were reading, and that kind of thing bothered you before, then buckle up your seatbelts, because Hercules' dialogue is even worse. On top of the already Claremontian stylings, we now have like a layer of Grecian Shakespeare painted over it. I legitimately hated reading Hercules' dialogue. We've got stuff like, "By my troth, a part of me would like nothing more than to beard Hades in his own hall," and things like, "If thou wilt indulge me, I have a solution which will avoid bloodshed on either side, and teach yon dark god, my uncle, a lesson he'll not soon forget." That's on top of the rest of the dialogue of the Fantastic Four, plus Claremont's direct narration to explain what Hercules is doing here and what's going on, and it just really gets old. You know when you buy a cake from like a grocery store and the frosting on it's already too sweet, and then you get to the pieces of the frosting that have like extra frosting piled on top and suddenly like you can't eat any of it? That's this moment, but in writing. Speaking of what's going on, we've got this reference to the ending of the Magneto War here. Part of me likes this, as once again, Claremont continues to acknowledge the fact that the Fantastic Four shared the Marvel Universe with other characters. If it wasn't for that kind of shared existence, Hades and Hippolyta would never have been able to kidnap the kids after all, so this is a core idea behind Claremont's run. And unlike Margali name-dropping her kids last issue, this issue, it works a little bit better. We definitely need to know why we find Hercules engaged in combat, but the trade-off there is that we don't need to find Hercules engaged in combat at all. The point of this scene is to ally with Hercules and have him propose a way to end Hades' machinations, not explore the effects that the X-books are having on the rest of the world. This bloats the issue, and Claremont's presentation of this bit of narrative is a little murky. I honestly had to stop and think about why there were refugees in East Africa, why they were Genosian mutates, and given the fact that they were slaves before leaving the country, I don't really know what the mercenaries were hoping to steal from them. Hercules could have just as easily been in a bar getting a beer, or a fight, honestly, or any number of other situations. I can't even say that this is a good fight scene because it's literally 2 pages and the fight is over in like 4 2x2 panels once the Fantastic Four show up. I like the idea of the Fantastic Four contacting a Grecian expert. I like that that person is Hercules, and I like the solution that we're going to see at the end of this story, but this bit of story just doesn't work for me. Puppy finishes his teleport, but the group doesn't appear in the Grecian underworld. They appear in Hell, as in H-E-L, meaning the Norse Hell or the Norse underworld. Apparently, Puppy needs you to be very specific when you're referring to the underworld. Clad in geometric patterns of black and green, Hela stands over them. She asks, "What in hell," and yes, that is a pun, folks, "are they doing here?" Valeria replies that they're just passing through, it's a total accident, they'll be on their way and out of your hair, don't even worry about it, ma'am. But Hela pauses. None who enter her realm may leave without her approval. They have trespassed and must pay a price. And so Hela claims Valeria's soul. Through the girl, Hela can now take Franklin's soul as well. I'm not sure how that works, but we've got some Bamp and magic going on here, so yeah, anything's possible at this point. Anyways, Bounty sticks a gun in Hela's face and orders her to release the kids. And Hela is like, "No swearing. Are you for real? I'm the goddess of death. Do you really think that you can harm me?" And Bounty shrugs in reply. Yeah, she has been there and she has done that. It's no biggie. Now, come on, we got places to be, let them go. Hela's eyes thin. Fine, they can go. But the next time that they meet, things will end very differently. Franklin begs Puppy to take them to the correct place, and they teleport again. This time we finally make it to Tartarus. The Grecian underworld is actually made up of 2 realms, Elysia, which is like paradise for virtuous, heroic souls, and Tartarus, a realm of pain and punishment. Hades rules both of them, but we're in Tartarus now. A massive transport crawls along a seaside path, a domed city with spires rising behind it. Hung in the air above the transport is Caledonia, and standing guard over her is Hippolyta. And Bounty just slugs the crap out of her, full force and from behind. No honor in this fight. Alyssa thought that they had, a plan, or at least more of a plan than wanton violence, and Bounty laughs at this. The plan was to get in, free Caledonia, and get out, beating up as many of the Bacchae as they can along the way. Alyssa does not sigh at this reply, but I kind of wish that she did. She goes to get Caledonia down, but she needs someone stronger to break the shackles. Valeria, who had been fighting the Bacchae as well, looks up as a shadow appears before the transport, and a spiked hammer smashes into the craft, shattering it utterly. Wielding that hammer is a giant. He is easily like 4 times taller than any member of our cast, and he's huge. Covered in armor and wearing a pointy helmet with some eyes drawn on it, Cerberus the All-Seeing will now be their doom. Valeria sneers at him, and then no swearing, fucking charges at him. I love her can-do attitude. But she is swatted out of her jump in midair. Cerberus then backs up, allowing an army of assorted weirdos to gather before our cast. We've got yellow-crested titans, centaurs aimed with swords and bows and arrows, and the dread myrmidons arrayed against them. Hippolyta stands at the front, her hand ready to draw her blade. She hasn't seen courage like this since the days of Odysseus, and she'll look forward to carving such on their tombstones. And then they fight. We don't get, a lot of details on the fight, nor does it last very long, only about a page, but Claremont does do some nice prose narration about it. This makes it feel pretty epic, if only for a brief moment. How exactly this group can stand against an army with almost no powers beyond some enhanced strength, I do not know. But somehow, our group beats back the army and they make it to Hades' palace. Even he admits that they're a pretty impressive group to have made it so far. Hela's estimation of Valeria was on point. I'm assuming that she sent him a text or something over, Underworld Wire. And Valeria smiles at the compliment. Great. Now that we have that out of the way, how about we head out? Hades charges up, surrounding himself in blue energy. He can't allow that. Another wave of Hades' army surrounds the group, ready to battle again. Caledonia suggests that Valeria take Franklin and Puppy and get out. She and Bounty will cover their escape. But Marvel Girl isn't down with that, although she does tell Franklin to have Puppy get them all out of here. But Franklin says that Puppy can't. He's too scared. But fear not. The door to Hades' palace slams open, admitting Hercules and the Fantastic Four. Hades' nephew demands that his uncle stop this now and release those people. Hades glares. Not even Hercules' father, Zeus, has the authority in this realm to demand anything. The hero smiles and steps aside. Well, what about the authority of your wife? Persephone, hands on her hips, glares at her husband. Stop this foolishness now and let the kids go, dear. She left Tartarus to visit her mother for a few days, and he does this? Hades tries to play the injured party here. Look, they're invading my realm! But Persephone isn't buying that crap. However, Hades isn't the only one involved in this fight. We've still got Hippolyta, and she ain't in love with Persephone. Hippolyta charges back in, hoping to behead Valeria, but tendrils of darkness wrap around her, pulling her back. Hades was hoping to add the criminal underworld to his rule as well, but that game has now reached its end, as has his use for Hippolyta. As she's dragged away, Hippolyta swears vengeance on the Fantastic Four. The Thing, remember the Fantastic Four did arrive with Hercules, comments on how serious Hippolyta sounds. Bounty agrees that she's going to be a problem in the future for sure. Then she turns and sees Ben for the first time, and she asks for his name. He gives it, Ben Grimm. But why? And Bounty smiles at him. That's a strong name for a strong man. And she likes it. Caledonia then asks the Richards to forgive her for failing to protect their children, but it is Valeria who takes the ultimate blame, drawing all eyes upon her. For Sue, it's like looking into her past, like when she was a teenager. For the guys, though, it's like looking into the future. Like an alternate future. One where Reed Richards is dead, and one where Sue marries Victor Von Doom. For perhaps the first time in this entire issue, Valeria actually looks nervous. Hi, Mom. Way back in our first few episodes about Fantastic Four Volume 3, I mentioned that author Scott Lobdell was using an ABC plot style of writing, meaning that each issue has an A plot, which is the immediate thing that that particular issue is dealing with. If Galactus is on the cover, then that issue is probably dealing with Galactus. Plot B is then something that will be dealt with in perhaps the next issue. Maybe Dr. Doom is gloating about his plan to use Galactus's power for his own purposes, but he hasn't made that move yet. Traditionally, Plot B will end the issue that you're reading and then become Plot A in the next issue. Then, the C plot is something that'll be dealt with way in the future. Like maybe during the fight, the Human Torch's flames cut out for a second, and he doesn't know why it happened. But it was only for a second, and then they came back, so it feels like no big deal right now. The next issue would then bring the B plot to the forefront, becoming the new A plot, and the previous C plot would become your new B plot, and you would introduce a new C plot, and on and on and on, for as long as you were on the book. This allows the author to constantly address whatever story elements that they have currently in play while moving forward and creating new ones all of the time. Clearly, author Chris Claremont does not subscribe to that style of writing, because all of this issue comes out of no swearing and nowhere. Our main focus for issue 21 isn't the return of the Fantastic Four to their home dimension. It's not on the long-established but yet to be dealt with threat to the very nature of the universe. It's not on how the Fantastic Four's extended family are dealing with their absence. It's not even on Caledonia's backstory or Bounty's hunt for her. Even the main plotline here, that of stopping Hades' machinations, actually comes second to the introduction of Valeria Von Doom. On the one hand, I do enjoy Valeria here, as I said earlier, but I don't like this bit of writing. Everyone takes a back seat to her, despite being well-conceived and pre-established characters in their own right. This story could have been about Alyssa. Remember, she's a genius herself, close to Reed in intelligence. This story could have been about her taking a Mr. Fantastic-like role in this adventure, with Bounty taking the role of the Thing as the strong person, Caledonia's sword skills taking the place of the Invisible Woman's grace, and then Marvel Girl would be the hot-headed Human Torch analog rushing into every fight eagerly. We could have seen the birth of a whole new team here, or it could even have been about Alyssa taking up that role, but ultimately not wanting it, and this adventure would prove that to her. As a pre-established character and an equal to Reed Richards, and thanks to her role as Aunt Alyssa, Alyssa feels like she should be an authority figure here, but she never is. Valeria argues with her at every turn and then basically does whatever she wants. It almost would have worked better. No, I'm actually sure that this issue would have worked better if Valeria had grabbed Puppy, Bounty, and Franklin and then teleported without Alyssa at all. Valeria could even have reasoned that Alyssa has no powers and so she needed to be left behind. This would have then put Alyssa back into the role that she already wanted, that of contacting the Avengers for help, and she could have played out the rest of Hercules' story herself. You know, Herc is happy to help, but he can't beat Hades physically, so then Alyssa uses her knowledge of Greek myths to ask for a tag-in, and there's the idea for Persephone. This would have left her with a sense of agency, proved that her true strength lies in her mind, and allowed her to establish a bit of social dominance over her new rebellious adopted niece. Or this story could have been about Caledonia and Bounty. We know that Caledonia is both somehow a member of the Captain Britain Corps, but also a slave. We know that Bounty has been hired to retrieve her, but I would argue that Bounty is clearly more than just her job, despite her job also being her name. She didn't have to dive on that grenade, nor did she have to fight alongside the group in order to save Caledonia. She doesn't even turn on them at any point in order to take Caledonia captive for herself. She just, feels like part of the group already. So you could have restructured this story a little bit and focused on how Hippolyta feels about somehow being the queen of the Amazons, but she is subservient to the king of the underworld. And then you could have tied that in with Caledonia's struggle against whoever enslaved her, and then you could have tied that in with Bounty's own sense of lawlessness and her headstrong nature. Make this story about women fighting their way out from unfair conditions, fighting for their own place in the world. Hippolyta will rule the New York crime scene, but she'll do it on her terms, thank you. And Caledonia and Bounty back up her claim, forcing Hades to step back or something, I don't know. But it's not. It's about Claremont shoving Valeria down our throats and hoping that we take a shine to her, because she ain't going anywhere. This is the double-edged blade of this introduction. On the one hand, yes, I did enjoy Valeria in this story, and I'm interested to see how the rest of the Fantastic Four deal with her. And if her existence means that alternate future they saw is creeping any closer. But on the other hand, Valeria being in this story relegates everything that I am already interested in to background noise, and yeah, that absolutely bothers me. In a lot of ways, this issue does share a lot of issue 16's strengths. The narrative really moves too fast most of the time for us to question things, and while I'm kind of baffled and left reeling, I just end up nodding my head and I think to myself that yeah, I enjoyed this. But upon slowing things down and breaking the story down a bit more, the cracks really start to show through. Hades lacks any motivation, really. I don't understand Hippolyta's loyalty to him or her grudge against Sue Storm, which sure got dropped real quick. And while I did enjoy meeting Valeria, I also feel like adding her in pushes other, more important, already established story elements away from the spotlight. You know, this and the Ruin story almost make me think of like Secret Six's Reptile Brain arc, meaning that I think that they were intended to be longer, but they were forced to be cut down. Stretch either of these stories into 2 or maybe 3 issues, and I think we would all be much better off, and Claremont could have explored them a little bit better. We've now spent an issue getting to know Valeria Von Doom, and we have seen how far she would go to defend those that she considers her family. She would literally go to hell and face down not 1, but 2 gods of death. But that doesn't mean that the Fantastic Four reciprocate those feelings. And in issue 22, we explore exactly how Sue Storm Richards feels about Valeria. Then, we end this second streak of Fantastic Four issues with a Spider-Man book. Bounty came to Earth in order to retrieve Caledonia, but things have a funny way of going wrong on our lovely blue planet. Caught between 2 warring gangs, Caledonia must team up with the Wall Crawler in order to save 2 lovers in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual for the year 2000. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.12, Love's Heavy Burden. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.